Welcome to Arkansas Wildlife. When springtime arrives, no matter how cool the temperatures may still be, sometimes you just want to go fishing. And that's what we're going to do to kick off this week's show. 3 fish, 3 species now. Spring also means turkey hunting here in Arkansas. We're going to head up to the Ozarks and see if I can bag a big old eastern gobbler. After that, we're going to check in with Jeremy Wood, the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission's new turkey biologist, and get a status of the wild turkey in the natural state. All that and this week's winner of an Arkansas hunting and fishing license right after this break. Arkansas Wildlife is brought to you in part by Academy Sports and Outdoors. For all, for less. Finally. Once duck season ends in January, I'm done with winter. I'm ready to move on to springtime and fish. And even though you can fish in Arkansas year-round, the best fishing obviously is in the spring. A few weeks ago, Scotty Wyatt, our associate producer, cameraman, we're looking to get out, get a fishing episode. We just wanted to get outside and enjoy one of these warmer, late winter, early spring days. So the first thing you think is the white bass run. We went out to Lake Maumelle and tried to catch white bass, and on our first trip, 0, skunked. Well, I say that. Did we get that on camera? Crappie! There we did, yeah. I say we were skunked, but actually we did catch one really nice crappie. And normally that would be great, but that was the only fish we caught, so we let it go and decided to go back and try white bass another day. In between our white bass trips, we were out filming a segment on the camping platform on the Little Maumelle Water Trail, so we had to throw some rods in the boat, and we decided to do a little bit of bass fishing. Little largemouth. Chunky though. We were probably still a little bit early, but hey man, we caught some fish and it satisfied, scratched that fishing itch a little bit. Even if you're not catching a lot of fish or if you're catching small fish, man, sometimes it's just nice to be out on the water. It gives you a little taste of what's to come later on in the spring. We gave the white bass another week. The water temperatures were warming up. We'd had several warm days. Night still pretty cold though. A little bit of rainfall, which kind of triggers the run sometimes, but oh, there you go. 30 minutes into our trip, we finally got a white bass, and we're thinking, okay, maybe this is it. It like it at least. That's what we're after. Haha, yeah! Finally, target species. But alas, that was the only white bass we caught that day. Here he is, that's fish. Early season crappie action, boy, that's a good one. Bad. However, we did catch a few small black bass and largemouth. Well, 3 fish, 3 species now. 3 little largemouth. You know, we're after white bass because that's what runs earliest, but sometimes you just want to get the string pulled. And so, you know, I'll take a largemouth or a crappie or a white bass. It's early season, we just want to go fishing. And again, you know, we really didn't kind of do what we were setting out to do, but when it's early spring and it's cold outside and just starting to warm up, then you just got to go fishing. And you can't catch them if you're sitting at home on the couch watching TV. We're going turkey hunting today, but unfortunately this is a bit of a sad story, so grab a box of tissues and get ready to lament the tale of a woeful turkey hunter. Me. Better get these guns up. Man, this is gonna happen pretty fast, we think. This story actually begins about 4 years ago. The spring of 2015, my friend Joel Tevetin was my realtor, and he was showing my wife and I a few houses. We were in the market for a new house. Joel was showing us a house a few days before turkey season opened, and he tells me that he's going turkey hunting on a new piece of property that his dad had, and he didn't have a turkey call. I loaned Joel a turkey call, and he took it up to that new property on their first turkey season there, and he was successful. Which made me pretty envious because at the time I had been trying to kill a turkey for about 15 years, unsuccessfully. I ended up going out with Joel later in the season up on that piece of property. We didn't have any luck, a little bit slow that morning, but fast forward to the 2016 season and we went out with him again. We heard some birds gobbling on the roost early that morning. Couldn't get any of them to respond, so we shifted gears a little bit and went to a field where Joel had been successful in the past. We had a bunch of hens come out and check out the decoy right there in front of us. I mean, close enough to touch practically, but no gobblers. And so another turkey season came and went without me getting a spring gobbler. The season opened on Monday, as it did this turkey season, and we went up on Sunday. I started getting texts from Joel about 8:15 in the morning. He had heard some birds gobbling early, but more importantly, he had seen two gobblers strutting within steps of his cabin. He sent me one text message picture. The turkey was so close that all you could see besides the turkey, fully fanned out, was the rear quarter panel of his Z71 pickup in the foreground. The text messages keep coming in throughout the day. There's these two birds there. He feels like he's trapped in the cabin because he doesn't want to leave and go out and potentially spook the birds. He watches these birds for so long, these two mature gobblers, that he's given them nicknames. One of them has a slightly wispy beard that he has nicknamed Thin Beard, and naturally the other one is Thick Beard. And you can imagine that he says, Thin Beard has my name written all over it. We get up there about 4:45 on Sunday afternoon. Joel is still sending me texts. He says the gobblers are in the field. You're gonna see them when you drive through coming to the cabin. Sure enough, we're driving through the field on the way to the cabin, and there they were, both gobblers, along with a couple of hens, but they didn't seem real bothered by us as we drove through. I'm really getting excited at this point. I mean, the turkeys are there, I've seen them, they didn't really spook off too bad, and so I'm thinking, this is finally gonna happen. I am going to get a turkey tomorrow.
Well, that's a good sign right there.
We cooked some dinner that night, sat around the campfire, just had a good time, enjoyed the company, and made a game plan for the next day. Joel really thought that we were going to have a great chance to double on these turkeys. He had been watching these birds all day Sunday, so we really didn't think it was going to be too difficult. So clearly he had watched them long enough to sort of pattern their behavior. They were conditioned to the vehicles being there by the cabin, so we had the game plan. We went to bed and got up the next morning and set out for the hunt.
Well, should we go on and go down to our spot?
We got settled into our spot, heard the birds gobble a couple of times after flying down from the roost. I had just had enough time to get my calls sort of spread out in front of me. We had a little piece of camo netting in front of us, and Joel says, after maybe 2 or 3 minutes, here they come, 2 gobblers.
We got 2 coming, Scotty.
I made a couple of little soft clucks, a little series of yelps. We also had a decoy out in front of us. These birds are headed straight to that hen decoy about 15 or 20 steps in front of us, and they're in a hurry.
They are approaching rapidly. Better get these guns up. Man, this is gonna happen pretty fast, we think.
I got my gun up on my knee, I'm getting ready. I encourage Joel to do the same.
Better get that gun up in place, man. Because if you try to move when they get close.
Before you know it, I've got Thin Beard naturally about 15 steps in front of me, inspecting the hen decoy. Thick Beard was right there too, and I'm just waiting for Joel to tell me I'm ready because I've got a bead on this turkey. Well, about a minute passes, and I'm like, you know, Joel, are you ready? I mean, let's do this. Thick Beard had stopped about 20 steps short of the decoy, still easily within range, 20, 25 steps. But Joel had a little piece of brush between him and the bird, and he was afraid to take the shot. But he's saying, don't worry, if they leave, they're gonna come back. They were here all day yesterday, so we waited. Thick Beard made a big wide loop about 50 yards out. Joel thought it was a little too far to take a shot. The birds went on down the field to the east, and although he thought they would come back, they never did. We sat there about 7.5 more hours, got some interest from a few hens, a couple of which were dusting right there just a few steps in front of us. It turned into a long and fruitless day, and I still didn't get my first turkey.
Spring in the natural state is a magical time of year for Arkansas turkey hunters. Those hair-raising moments have been fewer and farther between over the past several years. After a peak of close to 20,000 turkeys checked by hunters in 2003, Arkansas's turkey harvest went on a steep decline over the ensuing decade, bottoming out at about 7,000 in 2011. Turkey harvest improved from 2011 to 2016, but the 2017 and 2018 seasons showed another downward trend. Arkansas isn't alone. Many of our neighboring states have experienced similar declines.
Pretty much every state in the southeast at this point in time is seeing some declines in their turkey harvest and their turkey population numbers. And there's lots of factors that are going into that. You know, reproduction's been down. That's probably being hampered a lot by weather. There's been a lot of cooler, wet springs lately. Predators are on the rise. In some places are stable, but we're not seeing as much of a harvest of those. The biggest obstacle is probably going to be habitat, and it's going to be habitat on private lands. We're at a point where, 10% of the state is in public hands, about 90% of it's in private hands. There's only so much efforts that we can put in public land to improve the habitat to increase our turkey populations. We're going to need help from private landowners to start thinking about opportunities to potentially thin timber stands and implement some things like burning or chemical injections to help open up the understory a little bit and get more of that nesting and brood rearing cover on the ground.
The Arkansas Game and Fish Commission is trying to reverse the negative trend through a conservative season that was adopted several years ago, as well as a later opening date.
That conservative season structure is in there for a reason. We're trying to potentially reduce the harvest to hopefully have more birds on the landscape in future years. If you hit them too hard, keep on having, a expanded season or, more opportunity, the potential there is that you end up over harvesting your birds, and in successive years you're going to have less and less of them on the landscape, and it's going to be harder for that population to rebound. So things like the Monday opener are in place to try to shift some of that hunting pressure early in the season for the first couple days if it were on a weekend, spread it out more over a week's time. I'm a turkey hunter myself, and I understand that there's a lot of concerns that, we're starting the season well after the birds are done gobbling. They're gobbled out by the time the season starts. Well, the truth of the matter is there are a lot of birds gobbling, say in March. I mean, I've heard them gobbling in February. Those birds that are gobbling that period of time, they're just saying, hey, I'm here, I'm ready to breed. The hens really aren't ready at that point in time. The majority of our hens are actually being bred in the week that our season currently starts, and through that first week. We're probably seeing about 60 to 70% of the hens have been bred by the third week in April. So by setting the season back a little bit later like we have, it's hopefully getting more of those hens bred before we start getting a lot of hunting pressure in the woods and removing a lot of toms, because once you shoot a tom, he's not out there and ready to breed a hen anymore, and the hen's got to work a lot harder to find one that's available.
In 2011, the Game and Fish Commission also implemented a rule protecting young gobblers, known as jakes, which made up between 25 and 40% of the overall harvest before the rule went into effect.
We've been looking at the impacts of the no jake regulation on harvest and survival rates throughout the season, and what we're seeing right now is that our jake survival is pretty high. It seems to be that regulation's doing what it was intended to do. We're seeing probably about 80% or more survival of our jake birds, or our basically one-year-old birds. So they should be available to harvest potentially in that second year once they become an adult.
Turkey hunters can help by participating in a voluntary spring gobbler hunting survey.
We're trying to make a more active push now to try to get more involvement from the public, because we're trying to really find out what you're hearing and seeing in the woods during the spring. We want to know when those birds are gobbling, when flocks are breaking up in the different regions of the state, because it really helps us out in the long run.
The public can also help by reporting observations of young turkeys between June 1st and August 31st. The annual Summer Brood Survey helps Game and Fish track reproductive success and pinpoint dates of peak breeding activity in the spring.
And this annually has been conducted by Game and Fish employees and other agency partners like the U.S. Forest Service and Fish and Wildlife Service. Like our spring gobbler hunting survey, we've been seeing a little bit of a decline in participation, decline in the number of observations that we've seen over the years. And so for the first time this year, we're looking to put that out to the public as well and try to increase the distribution of our observations on the landscape.
Despite recent downward trends, however, there's at least a little cause for some cautious optimism in the future.
Things are potentially looking up. In 2017, we had a pretty poor reproduction year, very cold and wet season in 2018, which probably kept a lot of folks out of the woods during the beginning part of the season, potentially reduced the harvest during that period. So we may end up seeing a few more birds harvested this year as long as the weather holds true and we get a little bit better conditions during the hunting season. And then in future years, our reproduction was looking a little bit better here in 2018. So the 2020 season may be a little bit better coming down the road. We've been seeing a lot more jakes and young birds on the landscape during our trapping efforts this year for research, which is promising for future years.
Arkansas Wildlife presents the Watch and Win Giveaway. During each episode of Arkansas Wildlife, we'll give away an Arkansas resident hunting and fishing license. At the end of this season, we'll be giving away $500 worth of fishing gear with everything you need for outdoor adventures on Arkansas lakes and streams. It's all provided by Academy Sports and Outdoors. Visit the Arkansas Wildlife webpage at arkansaswildlife.com and click on the Watch and Win icon to enter. This week's winner is Gary Jackson from Searcy. Congratulations and thanks for watching.